Hello, JD Estrada, also known as John Zender. I'm here in my studio and I wanted to share with you guys a little bit of a chart that I did a couple of days ago as I was explaining how the art kind of theory of being a successful artist kind of works in a workshop. I decided to share it with everybody else. So I created this chart just to give a visual explanation of how I see the art world or breaking into the career as an artist. This can be adapted to new artists. If you're new, if you're out of high school or in college, this might give you a little bit of a preparation of how to get ready to prepare yourself to become a professional artist. I've been doing art for over 40 years now, since the early 1980s, and so you can follow me or on Instagram under JD Estrada Art, or you can Google me under John Zender. Okay, so to begin, I wanted to sort of explain this chart to you. So I begin here where it says the beginning. Where else to begin than the beginning? Every artist has a beginning, whether you start as a young artist or as you can start at any age. There is no age limits as to when you can start being an artist, and an artist can be at any time in their life. I started right out of high school. Okay, the first, if you can see the chart, it has a trajectory, almost like a 180 degree, and then it comes all the way into what I call the advanced group. So from beginning to advanced, you have this, curve, and then it kind of loops around. So in the very beginning, the first stages of your career is getting all your artistic experiences as fast as you can. By that I mean, everything begins with your drawing skills. Your drawing skills, and then you're learning light and shadow, rendering, color theory, and so on and so on. The more techniques you learn, the more advanced you can play with medium and technique. So from beginning to what I would call skilled level, it has everything to do with how many techniques you have learned. If you are fortunate to go to art school, this process can be sped up into a 3 to 4 year speed. That's what I believe art school really is. It's a chance to discipline yourself, because you're paying out of your own pocket to discipline yourself to get as much of the technical aspects out of the way as possible. I went to Otis, and at Otis we had so much technique every single day for 3 to 4 years. If you didn't get a chance to go to art school, you can still learn as much as you can, either on your own or through YouTube videos. Begin with the most basic stuff and work your way out. Lots of times you're going to find that you find yourself somewhere here. That means you love to draw and nothing else. That's fine. You can stay here and still be successful. You can stay here in light and shadow or in color theory and still be successful. But what I like to tell people is, if you get the technique to a point where you can do photorealism without copying, okay? Because a lot of people like to copy, and that technique of copying does not take you too far, because if you just copy, you're just duplicating something, but you don't understand the technique of how to create it from nothing, okay? So again, I also have a percentage, 70, 20, 10. The 70% has to do with how many people in the general population can comprehend this section. 70% of the people comprehend drawing, sketches, color, and technique. Once you get to a point where you pass this in whatever sequence of time it takes you to get here, now you're at a skill level. You can paint anything you want. So from here you go into the theoretical or the art history component. So from here to here, you have all the art histories from as far back as you want to go. If you want to go back from the Renaissance all the way to now, then you can it might be a good idea maybe for you to make a chart like this at home and start with Renaissance and make every single art theory that has happened all the way into contemporary art where we are at now. I, in my personal experience as an artist, have also went through here, and I began to explore all these different art techniques or art movements that fascinated me. I began in the 1980s with graffiti art, while I was at Otis, and moved from graffiti art to muralism, from muralism to Chicano, from Chicano more to a cultural, maybe impressionism, and from impressionism I got more into portraiture and then into abstraction for 10 years. I did a lot of spiritual abstraction, influenced by a lot of Latin American artists, all the way to the point where I get to where I'm at now, which is here. And for the last 10 years, you can say I've been innovating. As you can see, once you get past the advanced, you begin to innovate. And innovate means you understand the technical aspects, you understand all the artistic aspects, and you begin to try to push the envelope either in technique or in theory and innovate. Now the percentage drops. Why does it drop? Because the 70% of the people that understand this, now you're in the theoretical, it dropped to 20%. When you're in the innovation component, your audience drops because you're pushing and you're introducing something relatively new from either an art historical perspective or new to the general public. So you begin to do a lot of educating. That means a lot of art exhibitions, writings, a lot of videos like I do, explaining the work, because it does take explanation. It's a new audience. You gotta let your audience, and sometimes an unfortunate reality is it takes years after your death, right? That people write about you 20 years later, 10 years later after your death, people begin to read and say, oh wow, he was way ahead of his time. That's where you get that. The other component that I added here just for information purposes is the art therapy. Because art therapy it's a different concept in itself, because in art therapy, it's not about learning a technique like in art school. It's more about understanding innovation of yourself, how to explore your inner workings, your traumas, it's an internal healing process, using any of these technical or using any of these theoretical artistic implementations at all. It's not about the end product, it's the process of creating, crafting, developing, innovating that helps therapeutic. That's why for a lot of innovators like me, once you get to a point where you're innovating, you're also internally healing yourself too and growing within as a person. Okay? And the last thing I want to say is the percentage also drops financially. That's a reality. If you are in the art business and you want to do art as a business, you're going to realize right away that 70%, the massive amount of audience, loves to see things that are very beautiful, pretty, easy on the eyes, very aesthetically pleasing, cartooning, pop, very wow, the wow factor. That's from my experience here. Unless you're following a theory and you have your clan or your audience, they will follow you because you do pop or you do abstraction and you are very skilled in abstraction. But still, your audience drops because you're not massively hitting a wide range of the general population. You're hitting your audience that might drop. Once you begin to innovate, like I am, your finances begin to drop because now you're trying to sell a work of art to someone who sort of like understands it or gets it or likes it. Because if I'm not doing something that is very, visually interesting to someone, they might go, that's ugly. Because the concept of beauty, from my opinion, has a lot to do with how familiar you are with the color, with the technique, and with the artist. When abstraction or when cubism or any of these movements were first introduced to the current audience, they were seen as ugly, raw, because they're used to seeing what's before that, not what's ahead of that. So that's why your income sort of drops a little bit. And in case you're wondering, where do the gatekeepers, because if you're an artist, you're going to find out that there are gatekeepers in the art world. Okay? Now the gatekeepers are usually somewhere in here. Why here where that transition happens? Because most people who finish art school, most people who are well skilled, have a huge variety. This is where a lot of artists, if we had a gathering of artists that are not yet discovered or are not, in museums or in galleries getting represented, we're all gonna be here, okay? Because the galleries are looking to see if any of these artists fall into any of these, either artistic theoretical, if you're a cubist, they wanna see your history of cubism, or if you're an innovator and you passed all this, they want to see if you're already in that point of innovation. And this process has no time limit. It took me 40 years, but just because it took me 40 years doesn't mean it's going to take you 40 years. You could move this in 10 years. Some people right out of art school find their place in art history, innovate immediately, get discovered, and now they're innovating. Now remember, this finances are where it gets tricky, because you can get a gallery and move your finances up, up quickly. So I hope this gives you a good understanding visually of what it takes to be an artist. But this has nothing to do with success. Success can be here, it can be here. Success can be anywhere on here. It all has to do with what do you define as success? And that would be another video for another time. So for now, again, you can go to jdestradaart.com to visit my artwork. You can also see my more commercial side that I do for community projects or art things. That's in jdestudios.com. And or you can just go straight to juandanielestrada.com, which is my full name, and you will see more videos and you will see more of the work that I produce. I hope you enjoyed this video and come back and see more.